I'm going to use an example that Iain McGilchrist likes to quote. You see birds eating. They're very, very focused on picking what they eat, and the focus is on differentiating the seed from the grit. And obviously that has an evolutionary value. If they eat good food, it's much better than if they eat dirt. But the conundrum is that if they are so focused on their food, then they have no attention left for a predator who could just be upon them and eat them. So, what did evolution choose? Well, it chose both. How is it possible that we have attention divided between focused attention and wide-ranging attention? Between picking up which is seed that's good to eat versus grit, and looking all around for predators. Iain McGilchrist makes the point that we have two circuits and they correspond to the two hemispheres of the brain. Now, he points out it's not that the two hemispheres do different things. They do the same thing, but in a different way. So they're going to both be receiving the information from the outside and processing it. The difference is that the left brain is going to be paying attention to the information in a very focused way. And the right brain is going to be paying attention in a much more open way. And so the two parts of the brain function differently in a way that is very similar to the Gendlin characteristic between a unit model and a process model. And as Gendlin say, both have their use, and we cannot function without having both of them. Iain McGilchrist would say that the process part is the master, the one that is able to have the vision, and the left brain is the emissary, the servant, who can execute things properly, but certainly does not have the creativity to come up with what needs to be done. So let's talk a little bit more about what happens when the brain is focused, in the case of the bird picking up seed versus grit. That essentially is a very simple pattern recognition. What is pattern recognition? Is you see something, that's it, it fits the mold, that must be it. Okay? So in talking about focusing, we know that this is the moment where we see if the handle resonates with the felt sense, and resonate is a way to express this through the metaphor of sound. We can also express it in a visual way. Again, when two things, something clicks with a pattern. So the question then is, what happens in the bird's mind when it recognizes something? It doesn't have a little light bulb that shows up on top of its head like idea. It doesn't have an aha moment, but basically it eats the grain. It's an instant connection between recognizing and eating. There is no cognitive step, no naming it, and then thinking about what the action step would be. This is something that I want to emphasize here, because when we talk about human beings, we know that as human beings we have this more elaborate capacity for processing concepts, for thinking. And so our model of how we act is that we think first, we make a decision, and then we act. However, if you think that essentially we are evolved from much more basic creatures that did not have that capacity to conceptualize, to think, to make decisions, then it makes much more sense to think that what happens is when something clicks, immediately there is some implicit body movement that is initiated. That implicit body movement of starting to go toward the seed and eating it, or whatever equivalent we have as human beings. And then what happens is, as we experience this implicit body movement, then it's translated into thoughts, into feelings, into felt sense.